So welcome back to Lawrence Explains Online Academic Tuition. In this video I'm going to take a look at Paper 1, Question 4 of the English Language exam. So it's English Language, Paper 1, Question 4. This is taken from an AQA paper, and having said that, it's many of the skills that we need to demonstrate in this question are applicable to the other boards as well. So let's take a look at this question 4 here. So I've already looked at questions 1, 2 and 3 and the source itself on previous videos, so if you need to look at those, obviously go back and check those out. Focus this part of your answer on part of the source from line 25 to the end. As a student said, this part of the story where Mr. Fisher is marking homework shows Tibbott's story is better than Mr. Fisher expected and his reaction is extreme. To what extent do you agree? In your response, you could consider your own impressions of what Mr. Fisher expected Tibbott's homework to be like. Evaluate how the writer conveys Mr. Fisher's reaction to what he discovers. Support your responses with references to the text. So, point, quotation, explanation. Okay, so we've got this statement here. This part of the story where Mr. Fisher is marking the homework shows his story is better than his reaction is extreme. Better than expected, and his reaction is extreme. To what extent do you agree? In my case, I would agree wholeheartedly with that statement. I think it's definitely the case that, well, let's explore it a little bit. So, he does expect something of Alistair Tibbott because he says, not a brilliant scholar by any means, but there was a spark in him which deserved attention. So perhaps he does have some expectations of Fisher, but I don't think they were quite, I don't think they were quite as high as the work that Tibbott actually produced. So I would probably maybe say there, he did have some expectations, but also not grandiose expectations either. His reaction is extreme, okay, and I would agree with that because I'd look at these parts here, all this kind of physical talk here, strange sensation, tightening of the diaphragm, breath quickened, stopped, quickened again, so strange sensation, all this physical stuff, to me is very extreme, and I would say actually, honestly, I'd say borderline, not that healthy, to be honest. I mean, I've never had this type of reaction to any book, any work of fiction. I've had really positive reactions, but I've never begun to sweat, for example. And I have read some brilliant works from great writers, and also, some very promising works from students over the years. So I would agree this is very extreme. He's obviously very connected to reading and to his passion for literature and also his job as well. So I would definitely say this is an extreme reaction. Maybe sometimes people get chills. You get a bit of a tingle on your neck sometimes if something's really moving. But this is, breath quickening and beginning to sweat is almost like he's having a heart attack or something. So this is pretty intense. Evaluate how the writer conveys Mr. Fisher's reaction to what he discovers. So it really focuses in here on the physical sensations. We've also got the comparison to a prospector seeking gold. I think that's quite an interesting comparison now. Definitely focusing on that. Shakes out a nugget the size of his gold, the size of his fist. It's an interesting comparison. And the last part as well, evaluate how he conveys Mr. Fisher's reaction to what he discovers. So here we've got this last paragraph here. Mr. Fisher actually feels that it's just the originality of the work that it really stands out. And although there are themes, there's nothing in there in of itself that would kind of logically lead to such a reaction. It's just the sheer originality of it. Those would be the main points I would pick out here. Now, interestingly, you'll see here this is a 20-mark question. Is a huge weight on this question. So part of that is because you have to dissect this beginning statement here. Sorry, there's a very loud motorbike going past there. So part of this is due to the fact you've got to analyze this statement, and then you've got to kind of compare this idea to your own thought process and to what extent you agree. Is there anything else in there? I'm just thinking. Yeah, and so let me just underline those quotations at the top here, which says there is a bit of hope for Tibbett, but I don't think he's expecting anything like the piece of work that he actually gets. So I'll say this is really one of the questions where you're going to have to do an in-depth analysis of the different bits and pieces of language that you see here. So PQE, point, quotation, explanation, and expansion, or point, quotation, explanation. That's really the strategy that we're going to use here. So I would probably take quotations from each paragraph and then begin to dissect those in some detail. You want to leave a good 15 minutes, I would say, for maybe 12-15 minutes for this question. In this question we're looking at both content and form, and there's also a discursive aspect to it as well, in the sense that we are looking at comparing our own view to a view that's put forward to us. So that is it for the analytical section of this paper. I'm going to come back in the next video and we're going to take a look at question 5, which is the creative writing section of this paper.